Have you ever stopped to wonder why, despite centuries of lessons, humanity keeps cycling back into the brutality of war? Why, even with the vivid scars of past conflicts etched deep into our collective memory, do we find ourselves repeating the same tragic mistakes generation after generation? The answers lie deeper than politics, greed, or even human nature itself. There's a hidden spiritual dimension we rarely acknowledge: karma. Yes, karma, the ancient principle of cause and effect, might just hold the key to understanding the relentless pattern of war that humanity seems unable to break free from. Imagine this: every act of violence, every injustice, every unresolved bitterness from the past doesn't simply vanish into history. Instead, it creates ripples, a powerful energy field pulling humanity back into the cycle, demanding resolution and healing. But how exactly does karma, an idea often simplified into personal morality, affect entire civilizations? And could recognizing this hidden truth finally offer us the wisdom to break free? In today's video, we will explore the profound karmic forces behind humanity's recurring wars. Together, we'll unravel historical events through the lens of spiritual accountability, psychological truths, and timeless Buddhist wisdom. By the end of this exploration, you'll have a deeper understanding not only of why wars persist, but also how each one of us can become catalysts for a more peaceful, enlightened future. Stay tuned until the end, because the path to lasting peace begins with the karmic awareness we all desperately need but rarely speak of. War does not begin with bombs or borders. It begins in the unseen, within the subtle architecture of human consciousness. Before a single bullet is fired, there is already a disturbance, an energy, an imbalance in the collective soul. This is the karmic blueprint of conflict. Think of karma as a spiritual memory system. Every thought, every action, every intention leaves a trace, not just individually, but collectively. Nations, tribes, cultures, all carry karmic imprints from their histories. When these imprints are soaked in betrayal, revenge, or domination, they don't simply vanish with treaties or time. They linger, and like unhealed wounds, they attract circumstances that mirror them. The blueprint of war is built on unresolved energy. When a country wages war without true reconciliation, when past atrocities are buried rather than acknowledged, that karma festers. It's like a spiritual mold growing beneath the surface, hidden yet toxic. Eventually, it manifests, not always as war right away, but as unrest, fear, and division. You can see this across history. The fall of empires, civil wars, even economic collapses, they're not random. They're echoes of karmic imbalance seeking restoration. But because we rarely approach these events spiritually, we fail to learn the true lesson. So the blueprint resets and the cycle continues. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from ignorance, avidya, not just ignorance of facts, but a deeper spiritual blindness, forgetting our interconnectedness, our unity. When a society forgets this, it starts to other its neighbors. It creates enemies from shadows. It justifies violence as protection. But underneath, the war is always against the self. Here's a chilling thought. Every war is a war against a forgotten part of ourselves. Until we see conflict as a mirror, we will always blame the reflection. But war isn't something others do to us. It is something born from our unresolved fear, our collective pain, our karmic debts. And the battlefield is simply the final expression of what was already boiling inside. The seeds of war are spiritual, not just political. And unless we change the inner soil, the same toxic harvest will keep growing. If this idea speaks to your journey, give this video a like so it reaches others who need it. When we think of karma, we often imagine personal actions and consequences. But karma isn't just individual, it's collective. Families, cities, even entire nations carry energetic patterns shaped by their histories. These patterns influence not only what a society remembers, but how it behaves when challenged. Consider a nation that built its wealth on conquest or colonization. Long after the political systems have changed, the karmic residue of exploitation remains. It's woven into the culture's unconscious attitudes, its fears, and its myths. This isn't about guilt, it's about spiritual accountability. Karma is not punishment, it's a call to balance. Think about how generational trauma is passed down in families. A grandparent's pain becomes a parent's behavior, becomes a child's worldview. Nations work the same way. If injustices are buried instead of healed, they harden into collective wounds, and wounded nations lash out, sometimes through rhetoric, sometimes through war. This is why historical amnesia is so dangerous. When a country refuses to face its past, when it sanitizes history or glorifies aggression, it disconnects from the karmic learning process. It dooms itself to repeat the lesson through suffering. In Japan, the trauma of Hiroshima and Nagasaki reshaped the national psyche. It gave birth to a strong pacifist identity. Contrast this with regions where past wars are glorified, where nationalism masks unhealed shame. The energy is entirely different, and so is the karma they carry forward. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look at suffering as a teacher. When a society experiences collective suffering, be it war, famine, or colonization, it's not just a tragedy, it's a karmic checkpoint, a chance to reflect, atone, and transform. If we miss that opportunity, the pain doesn't go away, it simply reconfigures itself. That's why cycles of violence aren't coincidences. They are energetic returns. Think of Europe before World War II. The unresolved pain and humiliation from World War I didn't just fade, it metastasized. It created fertile ground for extremism, fear, and ultimately another world war. That wasn't random. It was karmic, inertia at scale. Nations inherit not just land or laws, but emotional and spiritual legacies. What we refuse to heal, we are doomed to repeat. If this resonates with you, let me know in the comments below. Which unhealed stories do you think still shape the world today? War isn't just a geopolitical failure, it's a spiritual revelation. It strips away illusions and forces us to confront what lies beneath: fear, division, ego, and the desperate grasp for control. In that sense, war is a mirror, not of who we want to be, but of who we've allowed ourselves to become. When bombs fall and borders burn, it becomes painfully clear how fragile civilization really is, how quickly reason yields to rage. But here's the uncomfortable truth. War reveals what peace often hides: our deep-seated distrust of one another, our unresolved traumas, our spiritual immaturity. This doesn't mean peace is a lie. Rather, it shows that peace without inner transformation is only temporary. It's like a clean surface hiding a rotting foundation. Eventually, the cracks appear. Buddhist philosophy teaches that everything we resist will persist until we face it. The same applies to conflict. What we repress, whether as individuals or societies, doesn't disappear. It festers, it gains energy, and eventually it erupts in some form of violence, whether domestic, civil, or international. So when we witness war, we must ask not only who did this, but also, what does this reflect? Are we seeing the rage of the oppressed, the fear of the powerful, the karma of neglect? These aren't excuses, they are spiritual diagnostics. They help us understand the deeper imbalance that violence is trying to expose. For example, the Cold War wasn't just a geopolitical standoff, it was a spiritual reflection of humanity's split psyche. One side clung to control, the other to revolution. Both sides feared their own reflection in the other. It was less about ideology and more about projection, each side seeing their shadow in the other. This is what war often is, a projection of our shadow. The parts of ourselves, individually or collectively, we don't want to see, so we externalize them. We call them enemies, and we try to destroy them, thinking it will bring peace. But you can't kill a shadow. You can only integrate it. Every conflict carries a message. The real battle is never just out there, it's within. Until we face our own shadows, we will always project them onto the world. If this reflection touches something in you, pause and ask, what part of myself do I still fear? That may be the key to your personal peace. At the root of all war lies a single dangerous illusion, the belief in separation. That we are different from them, that our suffering matters more, that our fear justifies their pain. But this illusion is not just political, it's deeply spiritual, and it is the core lie that fuels every act of violence on earth. Buddhism calls this Maya, the veil of illusion that makes us forget the interconnectedness of all life. When we fall under this spell, we stop seeing others as sacred. We start seeing them as threats, as resources, as expendable. And that is how war begins, not with weapons, but with the quiet death of empathy. The moment a society believes it is fundamentally separate from another, the seeds of war are already planted. Because from there, it becomes easy to dehumanize, easy to justify cruelty, easy to kill. This illusion is incredibly seductive. It gives us a false sense of identity, us versus them. It simplifies complexity. It reduces entire cultures, nations, and faiths to caricatures, but in doing so, it also reduces our own humanity. The more we define ourselves by opposition, the more we invite conflict. True peace begins not in treaties, but in perception. How we see others. One of the most profound teachings of the Buddha was that there is no other. Every being is you in another form. Every pain you inflict returns to you, because on the deepest level, you are not separate from the world you hurt. Consider the wars fought in the name of religion. How many millions have died because of belief systems that were originally meant to awaken compassion? Why? Because those teachings were twisted by the illusion of separation, turned into tools for division instead of bridges to truth. Even today, technology has connected us more than ever before, yet division persists. Tribalism is not just geographical anymore, it's ideological, digital, even spiritual. And this modern division is even more insidious because it often disguises itself as righteousness. But the truth remains. Any ideology that thrives on separating people, that encourages superiority or fear of the other, carries the karmic seed of war. Ending war requires more than ending violence. It requires dissolving the illusion that fuels violence, the illusion that we are not one. If this realization speaks to your heart, let it guide how you see the next person who disagrees with you. Begin there. Not all wars are launched with weapons. Some are allowed to happen through silence, through the quiet refusal to speak up, to intervene, or to acknowledge the suffering of others. In spiritual terms, this silence is not neutrality. It's complicity. Injustice doesn't need approval to thrive. It only needs indifference. When people, communities, or entire nations look away from the pain of others, they create space for karmic imbalance to grow. They allow the wound to deepen, the hatred to ferment, the violence to gain momentum. Many of the world's greatest atrocities didn't begin with explosions. They began with silence, with ignored warnings, with dismissed suffering, with the subtle choice to not get involved. Buddhist teachings remind us that compassion is not passive. It is fierce. It demands engagement, presence, and courage. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Yet so often we choose no words at all. We fear discomfort more than injustice. When a society prioritizes comfort over conscience, war becomes inevitable. Look at the patterns. Genocides that could have been prevented, invasions that were allowed to unfold, marginalized communities whose cries went unheard until it was too late. The karma of these silences doesn't just fall on the aggressor. It stains the collective. It creates echoes that return in time. This is why spiritual awakening must include moral clarity. Enlightenment is not escape. It is engagement with reality. However, painful. To see suffering and do nothing is to reinforce the karmic script that leads to violence. And here's the paradox. The more we ignore injustice, the more we invite conflict into our own lives. Because karmically, what we abandon in others, we abandon in ourselves. And what we suppress externally eventually erupts internally. We might not fire weapons, but our silence writes the next war's opening lines. True peacekeepers are not those who simply avoid conflict, but those who face the fire of injustice with open eyes and steady hearts. They break the karmic cycle, not just with their actions, but with their refusal to be silent in the presence of suffering. History doesn't just repeat itself, it reveals what hasn't been healed. Look closely at the timelines of human civilization, and you'll see an eerie rhythm. Periods of peace followed by upheaval, Revolutions followed by new forms of oppression, treaties signed with hope, unraveling into conflict once more. Why? Because the karmic lesson was never truly learned. Each generation inherits the unprocessed trauma of the last, and if we don't transform it, we transmit it. Not always through direct violence, but through fear, mistrust, and policies shaped by wounds instead of wisdom. We often say, never again. But then again comes, because we confuse intellectual remembrance with spiritual reckoning. A statue, a museum, a holiday, these honor the past, but they don't necessarily heal it. Healing takes more than memory. It takes evolution. Buddhist wisdom frames life as a series of cycles, samsara. These cycles aren't punishments, they're invitations. Each repetition is a doorway to awakening, a chance to respond differently. When we repeat destructive patterns, it's not because we're cursed, it's because we haven't yet made the inner shift. So when history repeats itself with a new war, a new wave of hatred, or a new rise in authoritarianism, the question isn't, how did this happen again? The real question is, what have we still not learned? And often what we haven't learned is humility. Nations repeat mistakes when pride overrides reflection, when leaders refuse to see the suffering they've caused, when citizens prefer comfort over accountability. This resistance to growth creates karmic inertia, the spiritual equivalent of being stuck in a loop. Even at the individual level, we can see it. How many times do we repeat our own patterns, choosing the same toxic relationships, reacting with the same anger, avoiding the same inner truths, until one day, something breaks? That's karma showing us the same lesson until we evolve enough to pass it. The same principle applies to humanity at large. Each war, each uprising, each mass awakening is part of the soul's curriculum. Until we learn the true lesson, compassion, interbeing, forgiveness, we will keep repeating the class. But here's the hopeful truth. Karmic cycles are not eternal. They end the moment consciousness begins. The moment we wake up, the spiral breaks, and we can choose a different path, not because we're forced to, but because we finally see clearly. Revenge feels righteous until it restarts the cycle. Throughout history, wars have been justified in the name of justice, payback. Honor, one side harms the other retaliates. Generations pass, and yet the wound festers, the grudge matures, and war returns cloaked in new flags but fueled by the same old pain. Forgiveness, then, becomes the most radical and necessary spiritual act. Not because it denies the suffering, but because it refuses to pass that suffering forward. In Buddhist thought, forgiveness is not weakness, it is power. It is the conscious choice to stop the karmic wheel. When we forgive, we don't erase the past. We transform our relationship to it. We break the spell of vengeance that keeps the past alive in the present. But here's the truth. Forgiveness is hard. It demands that we feel the pain without weaponizing it, that we remember without revenging, that we grieve without needing to make someone else bleed. For individuals, this is already a mountain. For nations, it can seem impossible. And yet, there are moments in history where forgiveness changed everything. After apartheid, South Africa didn't descend into civil war. Why? Because of a radical commitment to truth and reconciliation. Victims and perpetrators sat face to face, not to seek revenge, but to be seen, heard, and held accountable. It wasn't perfect, but it was healing. It was karma being faced, not avoided. This model is echoed in Buddhism's teaching of metta, loving kindness meditation. We are taught to extend compassion not just to friends and loved ones, but even to our enemies. Why? Because holding hatred binds us to suffering. Forgiveness, then, is not for the other. It is for our liberation. On a karmic level, forgiveness interrupts the energetic debt. Instead of "you hurt me, so I must hurt you," it becomes "you hurt me, and I choose to heal rather than harm." That choice ripples outward, energetically breaking the chain of retaliation that fuels so many wars. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently, seeing the pain not as identity but as part of a shared human struggle, recognizing that the same wound that made someone harm you lives inside you too. This realization dissolves the illusion of separation and lays the foundation for lasting peace. If war is the external symptom, then awakening is the internal cure. We often speak of world peace as if it's something to be negotiated between nations, drafted in conference rooms or enforced by military might. But true peace, the kind that lasts, that heals, that breaks karmic cycles, begins in the unseen spaces of the human heart. Spiritual awakening is not about escaping the world, it's about seeing it clearly, seeing how our own fears, biases, and wounds shape our view of others, how the micro-conflicts in our daily lives, resentment, gossip, jealousy, rage, mirror the very energies that escalate into global conflict. In Buddhist tradition, the path to awakening begins with awareness, sati, awareness of the breath, the body, the mind. But as this awareness deepens, it becomes awareness of suffering, not just our own but that of others. This compassionate awareness is the seed of peace, because the more awake we are to the suffering of others, the less capable we are of harming them. Inner peace is not passive. It's fiercely active. It requires honesty, discipline, and deep humility. It demands that we look at our own shadows rather than project them onto others. It invites us to question not just what we believe, but why we believe it, and who we become when we cling too tightly to being right. The awakened soul does not need enemies. It sees through the illusion of separation and recognizes conflict for what it is, a cry for connection, distorted by fear. This inner awakening radiates outward. A single person at peace creates ripples in their family. A peaceful family influences a community. A conscious community reshapes a nation's destiny. This isn't naive idealism, it's karmic math. The energy we embody becomes the energy we emit, and what we emit, we inevitably receive. So when we ask, how can we stop war? The deepest answer is this: by ending the war within. When enough people awaken to their own wounds, forgive themselves, forgive others, and commit to inner clarity, the external world shifts, not instantly, but undeniably. The field of karma begins to change. The cycles slow down, and the soul of humanity starts to heal. Karma is not fate. It is not a life sentence. It's a flow, an energetic current shaped by past actions, yes, but constantly influenced by present awareness. And this is the liberating truth. The moment we become conscious, karma becomes choice. Too many people view karma as cosmic punishment, as if we're doomed to repeat pain over and over again. But that's a misunderstanding. Karma doesn't bind us. Unconsciousness does. Once we awaken to our patterns, we are no longer slaves to them. We become the authors of a new story. This is as true for nations as it is for individuals. Just because a country has a history of war doesn't mean it must continue that path. Just because a community has inherited trauma doesn't mean it can't be the birthplace of healing. History is heavy, but it's not immovable. It bends to consciousness. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a concept called kusala karma, skillful action. These are choices made with awareness, compassion, and non-attachment. Every time we act skillfully, we shift the energy field around us. We interrupt karmic momentum. We reroute the future. Even small actions matter. A leader who chooses diplomacy over aggression, a citizen who chooses truth over propaganda, a family who raises their children without hate, even in the aftermath of loss. These choices may seem small in a chaotic world, but spiritually they are seismic, because karma is not just about what you do, it's about the intention behind it. This is why conscious action is so powerful. It doesn't just neutralize negative karma, it creates new energetic pathways. A kind word spoken in the face of cruelty, a calm breath taken instead of an angry reaction, a moment of pause instead of revenge. Each of these becomes a thread in a new karmic tapestry. Over time, these threads can reweave the destiny of a people. We've seen this in moments of global awakening, civil rights movements, peace accords, acts of solidarity between so-called enemies. These moments shine like beacons in the dark because they weren't guided by karmic inertia. They were born of conscious, intentional, loving action. This is the great hope at the heart of karma. Nothing is fixed. Everything is fluid. The future is not written. It's sculpted in the present, moment by moment, choice by choice. What if our greatest responsibility is not to our past, but to the unborn future? Every thought, every action, every decision we make sends ripples forward, not just into our personal lives, but into the collective destiny of our children, their children, and all life to come. This is what it means to be a guardian of future. Karma. Spiritual traditions across the world have long held the belief that we are stewards of the earth, not owners. But what they often imply, subtly yet powerfully, is that we are also stewards of the energy that defines what this earth will become. The wars of the past may not be our fault, but their echoes are now ours to resolve. This isn't a burden. It's a sacred calling. To live in such a way that the next generation inherits not just cleaner air and safer borders, but a clearer karmic sky. One less clouded by hatred, division, or trauma. Imagine a world where empathy is taught alongside mathematics, where meditation is as common as memorization, where nations meet not to assert dominance, but to share wisdom. It may sound idealistic, but remember, every cultural norm was once an idea. Every era of peace began with a single brave shift in consciousness. The truth is, we don't need more strategies. We need more spirit, more people willing to be still, to listen deeply, and to live by principles that reflect the unity of all beings. This is how karma evolves. Not by accident, but by intention. To become a guardian of future karma means asking in every moment, what energy am I releasing into the world right now? Am I sowing seeds of connection or disconnection? Am I healing or hardening? Am I becoming the ancestor I would want to inherit? The Buddha often spoke of the ripple effect of a single awakened person, that their peace could influence countless lives. Now imagine that awakening multiplied, not just in individuals, but in families, schools, communities, governments. The karmic current would change. A new earth is not a utopian dream, it is a spiritual necessity. And it begins, not with laws, but with light. Not with force, but with consciousness. Not someday, but now. Simple spiritual practices to shift karmic patterns and end inner conflict. This journey through humanity's karmic relationship with war can feel overwhelming, but the power to change begins with the smallest conscious acts. Here are some deeply practical ways to apply what we've explored. Practice daily karma awareness. Each morning, pause before starting your day and ask, what energy do I want to offer the world today? This simple question activates conscious intention. Even if your day is full of meetings, errands, or stress, setting a karmic tone of compassion changes how you move through it and how others experience you. Heal ancestral patterns through reflection. We all carry family and cultural wounds, often inherited unconsciously. Sit quietly and reflect. What emotional habits or beliefs have I inherited that might be rooted in fear, anger, or superiority? Awareness is the first step in healing ancestral karma. Journaling about your lineage can bring clarity, even liberation. Use metta meditation for global karma. The practice of metta or loving-kindness meditation can transmute karmic energy not only in your life, but in the collective. Try this. Sit quietly, breathe gently, and repeat the phrases, "May I be peaceful." May others be peaceful. May all beings be peaceful. Visualize even those you disagree with bathed in light. This shifts your inner frequency and softens karmic loops of hostility. Speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Break the karma of silence. When you witness injustice, whether in conversation, community, or politics, speak gently but truthfully. Don't aim to win, aim to reveal. When truth is offered without ego, it lands like medicine, not a weapon. Transform conflict instead of avoiding it. When you're in personal conflict, resist the urge to react. Pause, breathe. Ask inwardly, what old story is this activating in me? What would healing look like right now? Often, karmic repetition shows up in everyday arguments. Bringing presence into these moments rewrites your personal script. and sends a new signal to the collective. Create a peace altar or sacred space. Dedicate a small space in your home as a symbol of peace. Light a candle, place a photo, a quote, a stone from the earth. This isn't decoration, it's energetic intention. When war rages outside, this space reminds you to carry peace within. Teach children and elders the power of karma. Break the generational pattern. Talk to children about energy, intention, and consequence, not as punishment but as empowerment. Speak with elders about their experiences and what they've learned about forgiveness. These conversations restore the karmic bridge between generations. Forgive for freedom, not permission. Think of someone you still hold resentment toward. Now ask, what would releasing this do for me? Forgiveness is not about approving harm, it's about ending the energetic contract that keeps you tied to pain. Even a whispered, "I release this," is a beginning. Consume media consciously. The images, news, and stories we absorb affect our spiritual field. Choose information that informs without inflaming. Seek stories of peace building, not just conflict. What you feed your mind, you feed the collective karma. 10. Bless the world every day. Make it a habit to silently bless the earth. As you walk, as you cook, as you see a stranger, may this being be free, may this land be healed, may peace be known here. These quiet offerings ripple farther than you know. Each of these actions is a thread in a new karmic pattern. None of them require power, wealth, or perfection, only presence, and presence, when multiplied, changes everything. We began this journey with a question. Why does humanity keep repeating war? And now we see, it's not just history repeating, it's unhealed karma. It's ancient wounds reappearing in new forms, unresolved pain echoing through time, spiritual lessons postponed again and again. But we also see something more powerful. The cycle is not unbreakable. War may be a symptom of humanity's unconsciousness, but peace is the expression of awakening. It begins not in palaces or parliaments, but in quiet rooms, in still hearts, in brave choices. In you, the karmic tide of humanity can be turned, not through revolution, but through realization, not through dominance, but through depth, and not tomorrow, but today. Every time you forgive instead of retaliate, the cycle softens. Every time you pause instead of project, the karma clears. Every time you see a stranger not as other but as sacred, a new earth emerges, just a little more clearly. We may not stop every war in our lifetime, but we can stop one, the one inside. And that ending alone can save a world. So I'll leave you with this question. What legacy of energy do you want to leave behind? Let that question guide your steps, your thoughts, your voice. If this video has stirred something in you, share it, like it. Let others hear what their hearts already know. Subscribe for more wisdom that speaks not just to the mind, but to the soul. Until then, walk gently. Your peace is powerful, and it matters more than you know.